Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here at our Know Their Rights webinar. This session is about understanding the unique power that U.S. citizens have to support their immigrant neighbors during this challenging time. We'll cover practical tools, legal rights, and actionable steps that you can take. But before we begin, we have some housekeeping items. For your privacy, you'll remain muted for the entire presentation with your video off. The chat function has also been disabled as an additional security measure. This session is being recorded and will be available to registered attendees. However, only the presenters will be visible and audible in the recording. You can submit questions through the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your screen. We strongly encourage you to select the anonymous option when submitting your questions to protect your privacy. And we ask that you wait until the end of the presentation to submit questions, as we may address your concerns during our talk. Please remember that our attorney, Rita, is here to provide general legal information and cannot give specific legal advice during the webinar. When submitting questions, please do not include any identifying information, no names, addresses, or specific case details. While you have the option to submit questions with your name visible, we strongly recommend choosing anonymous submission for everyone's safety, and inappropriate questions will be dismissed. And this webinar is for educational purposes only. We'll follow up at the end of the webinar with more resources that are relevant and hopefully helpful to you. Next slide. We're going to start with introductions. My name is Bethany, and I am the moderator for today's session. I sit on the board at Stories of Immigrants and am so honored to be a part of this conversation. So thank you to Rosa for inviting me. Our first panelist is Rita Arbusto. She is an immigration attorney at Arbusto Law, PLLC. Rita is a trauma-informed attorney who has been representing underserved immigrant populations, including unaccompanied children, for over 11 years. She has directly represented hundreds of clients and mentored over 100 pro bono cases. Rita founded Arbusto Law PLLC in early 2025 and currently contracts with both nonprofit and private practice attorneys to provide a variety of immigration legal services. Lastly, we have Rosa Bello. She is the president and founder of Stories of Immigrants. As an immigrant herself who has felt the weight of immigration injustice for over 25 years, Rosa brings both personal understanding and professional expertise to today's discussion. With extensive nonprofit leadership experience, she most recently directed programs serving more than 500 immigrants annually through an English education initiative, combining her lived experience with deep organizational expertise to offer unique insights into the challenges and rights of immigrant communities. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rosa.
All righty, welcome everybody, and thank you guys for being here. So we just want to get started by sharing who we are, right? Who is Stories of Immigrants, and what we are really trying to cover in today's session. So Stories of Immigrants, we amplify immigrant voices, we build community power and create pathways to justice through storytelling, education, and training, and creating communities of allies to support their immigrant neighbors. So at the heart of our organization, which is the name of our nonprofit, is we share immigrant stories. And we share it in a safe, anonymous way to really amplify their voices and really share so others may hear what is happening within the immigrant community without taking that mic away from the immigrant community. We use these stories to build community power, create pathways to justice, and to educate and train others so that people will come together to support our immigrant neighbors, which is part of today's conversation. So before we get started, a couple of things that we think are very, very important to mention that we want you to keep in mind throughout the rest of today's presentation. So number one, our role as allies. We are not here to be saviors or heroes. We are here to be partners. We want to walk alongside our immigrant neighbors. We want to share power and resources together. Number two, legal support comes first. So there's going to be a lot of things that you can do alongside our immigrant neighbors. However, we also want you to keep in mind that the first thing really with any idea is you want to contact a qualified immigration attorney or a DOJ accredited representative. So they should be the first people that you call when someone faces an enforcement action. Community support is very important because sadly, right now, with everything that's going on, immigration attorneys, DOJ representatives, they're very overwhelmed with just today's current enforcement landscape. So community support is definitely very important, but we do want to try these first, contact legal action. Number three, the reality of today's enforcement. So we will talk about constitutional protections because they still exist, they are still in place, but enforcement agencies often operate outside legal boundaries to meet quotas. In other words, sadly, enforcement agencies are breaking the law and they're not um, following these constitutional protections. But we still don't want to discourage you. We still believe that when we have multiple community members documenting, witnessing, and supporting together, it does build a stronger protection network. But we do, again, want to keep all of this in mind as we go through the presentation. So one of the things that we, for today's session, we are talking directly to US citizens. That is our main audience. Now, if you are not a US citizen, if you're undocumented or have temporary status, please don't leave. We're not kicking you out. We still think this information is important for you to be aware and also sharing it with others that are in your circle. But it is mostly for US citizens because we want to encourage them to take action because you have certain privileges and protections that undocumented individuals or people with temporary status do not have. Now, I do want to quickly point out because, of course, sadly, right now, we do see U.S. citizens being detained or even have been deported, but the chances are much, much lower compared, of course, to individuals that are undocumented or have temporary status. And that's sadly a result of just today's agencies administration just moving too quickly to meet numbers. But again, we still want to encourage you to take action and protect the immigrant community as best you can. And Rita will expand a little bit on that as well when we connect on the U.S. citizen situation. So as U.S. citizens, why we wanted to create this presentation for you, because it's one, you can act as a legal witness. You can film ICE encounters and demand to see judicial warrants without fear of deportation. Again, compared to individuals that are undocumented or have temporary status. You can access detention and court facilities. So you can visit detained individuals and attend bond hearings where family members are afraid to go, right? So if a father is detained and the rest of the family wants to visit him, it's going to be highly unlikely to be able to because they could also get detained. And so you as a US citizen can be that middle person that can go on their behalf and exchange information and notes. And again, we'll expand on this later on. You can serve as a public spokesperson. So you can speak to media and elected officials when affected individuals must remain silent for their safety. So you're able to speak up to the media. You can share your face, you can share your name as a US citizen, whereas someone that is undocumented or with temporary status is not able to because ICE can find them later. And also the same with elected officials. On both sides, you can go and share your concerns with the US citizens without that fear. So this data at the bottom, this is not just for full transparency. It's not data that you can easily find on the internet. The way that we got to this data is we collected, who are U.S. citizens in the United States, people that are undocumented, temporary status, and then lives in a mixed household status. And using the power of AI, got to this, where 2 out of 3 U.S. citizens most likely interact with someone who is undocumented, on temporary status, or lives in a mixed status household. You are more likely to have encountered someone that is under these situations, whether it's on your way to work and you have said good morning to someone at Starbucks has given you your coffee, or when you're dropping off your kids, you're saying hi to a parent that is dropping off their child, or someone that you know at work that has a family member that might be going through um, deportation, or maybe been in detention. So at some point, you have encountered someone that is being impacted by what's happening today. So it's no longer, these are people that are just strangers. It doesn't impact me. It impacts your community. It does impact you in some way where these people are around you and they are your neighbors. They're a part of your community. So we're going to talk more now about what is happening today, right? Why should we speak up? Why should we act as U.S. citizens? And I'll actually leave that to Rita to share more information on today's enforcement landscape.
Thank you, Rosa. So let me just paint a picture here of what immigrants are facing right now. And this will just give you a bit of critical context for understanding why your support is so critical and so urgent. So under the current administration, we've seen increased enforcement, and this is because the BBB gave ICE an unprecedented amount of money to carry out their enforcement actions. They've also given them, 45 billion to increase their detention capacity. There has been expanded 287G partnerships, which allow local police officers to work in tandem with ICE agents, as their partnership agreements entail. And as a result, community arrests are up 44% from last year. And workplace raids are also expanding. And I'm sure this is not like news to you all. You know how much enforcement has been out there, and we all feel it. We are here in the DC, Virginia, Maryland region, and it is starkly different today than it was, beginning of January. So we're in a different world. And this administration has also limited the pathways towards lawful immigration, um, access to lawful immigration status, lawful immigration processing, and they've done this by increasing fees. So, for example, asylum seekers now have to pay $100 annual fee with their asylum application, and the work permits are not free. They are $550 every 2 years. So that's one example. That also, for people to become a US citizen, as part of the showing that they have met the good moral character requirements, instead of just showing tax returns and a lack of criminal history, they have to show that they have an adherence to societal norms. And nobody really knows what this is, and this is clearly going to be a limitation on free speech, and it's highly subjective and highly problematic. Additionally, 6,000 student visas have been revoked this year, along with other TPS programs for certain countries. And in regard to the administration's mass detention and rapid deportation program, 70% of current detainees have no criminal convictions whatsoever. Whereas in previous administrations, there have been published priority lists that state who should be detained and who not. And, historically, that's been people who have, committed crimes, or, are or the like. And whereas now there's really no priority list. It's simply anyone, and it's up to the discretion of the ICE agent on who they will detain, excuse me. And as a result, 207 100,000 people have been deported in the first 6 months of 2025, which is a staggering number. It's like almost an entire year's number of deportations. It's just staggering. The other tools that this administration is using is an expansion of expedited removal, which allows immigrants to be removed from the United States without a hearing, and also the use of third-party removal for folks with who previously had protection under CAT and the CAT protection and withholding of removal. So really, really difficult situation. And that's why, with people being detained, moved around the country and removed within days, it's terrifying. And a result, as Rosa had mentioned before, mistakes are being made and even US citizens are being detained and deported. So the difference here is that, you know, US citizens have legal recourse. And so this is the reality that our immigrant neighbors face. And it's not a dramatization. It's documented fact, and that shows why this work is just so important. Now I'm going to hand it back to Rosa.
Thank you, Rita. So a couple of things that we wanted to share as we get started with these conversation of, okay, what can I do to help as a US citizen? The number one thing is, and I know this probably sounds obvious or pretty straightforward, but I mean, as part of our organization with stories, hearing the stories of individuals around us is very important. Understanding what is happening. If you already know a person that's going through this, checking in on them, making sure everything's okay. Or if you don't know someone that's going through this, but maybe you suspect someone that could somewhat be going through this, right? Maybe they made comments that just sounded something going on here. I think it's important for us to really just create safe spaces for us to really hear individual stories. Now, let me just quickly mention, if an immigrant is undocumented or has temporary status, it's scary for people to share that status with others that maybe they might not know. So it's always important to first get to know them little by little, just creating that safe space. And again, hearing their story. Once you know someone that is going through this, or you learn about it in US, you meeting other people in your community. Really, the first step is creating a rapid response networks. And I'm sure maybe some people have heard this. Other organizations or nonprofits have done this, but that's something you can also do within your community. So the number one thing is, okay, if we know someone that's going through is either undocumented or has temporary status, and they something could happen to them, right? Like they're always going to work. Like Rita said, in the DC region, it's crazy right now. So creating a rapid response network is critical. So number one, the oops, sorry. Creating a community, so text chain for emergencies. So who are people that you can trust that you can reach out to. You can create this text chain for if there is an emergency that you will need to reach out to. Creating standby guardianship arrangements, so having people ideally within the family of the person that might get detained, who can take care of the children, who can maybe take care of other family members, other pets as well. So understanding who will be that person, and also creating a list of trusted organizations. So we'll kind of expand more on this, on what type of organizations you might need to look into for different areas. But that's also something, and as part of this too, is finding a lawyer with other nonprofits. Sadly, and totally understandable with lawyer fees, it can get pretty expensive. So finding either pro bono help or other organizations that you can reach out to for legal support. Setting up emergency funds. So we don't want to start looking into fundraising after something has happened, but can we help the families create a budget for right now and start saving just in case something could potentially happen? Those emergency funds, again, going back into trust organizations, who can you reach out to if you do need some type of emergency fund if something does happen. I did want to quickly mention that says at the top here, lead these efforts. So again, going back into what our roles are, we are allies, we are partners of the immigrant community. So when we say lead these efforts, meaning that we want to again remind them that we are here for them, initiating that, checking in with them, making sure they're doing okay, and providing support, this type of support, that you can help them with this. The other thing I'll quickly mention too is that if this is something that you want to do to help the family, the reason why we're saying about text chains for emergencies, you want to work alongside others, not just you alone, because there is a lot that that can happen if someone does get detained and potentially can even be deported. So you do want to have also people alongside you that you can trust, that can be part of your rapid response network, and they each have a role to play alongside the families, kind of more in terms of partnerships. You want to help them create a power of attorney documents. You also want to have emergency contacts, and again, this is something that you can volunteer. Anybody can volunteer to be one. For we know that obviously for school, right? Maybe being an authorized pickup person, also for work. As you know, for work, they ask you for your emergency contact. I think that's important to have. Someone else, a US citizen, that can be contacted if something happens at work, a workplace raid, or other situations. Document organization, so helping families put documents together. Again, if someone does get detained, right, you don't want to help the family start finding things now. What can you do now to help that family? So putting those documentations together, organizing it so that if something does happen, one place you can easily find it, and take it to the lawyer, etc. Also, documents to avoid expedited removal is also very important. I'm actually going to pause here and bring it back to Rita to explain more on expedited removal.
So for simplicity's sake, I will just say that if uh, the immigrant has been in the United States for longer than 2 years, it is best for their attorney if they could uh, have documentary evidence that they've been in the United States for 2 years. It could potentially help. So that'd be leases, pay stubs, etc. And I'll leave it at that. And yet moving on. So I'm going to give a little bit of legal background and really try and not go into too much of a legal lecture here. But we're going to be talking about rights that are protected by the Fourth Amendment right to freedom from unreasonable search and seizure, and the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. So that's where we're grounding ourselves in. Those are the constitutional rights that we're grounding ourselves in. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has limited the Fourth Amendment rights of immigrants to some degree. However, they still exist, and there still are consequences for violations of these rights. So, what are the consequences, or what are the result of these violations? What you can do is one, it can be a defense as a course of the immigration case, and two, if there, excuse me, and two, it can be, you can bring a federal litigation in some cases, of course, particularly if there are injuries. So those are the options. So what do you need for a court case is evidence. And that's where the US friend observer comes in. They can, one, create evidence by documenting, and this is in the context of ICE encounters. And two, they can assist in visibility and creating awareness that the ICE agents are being watched and are being reminded of the constitutional rights of immigrants. Third, the other role that U.S. Citizens can play in ICE encounters is, de-escalation where possible, and the obvious goal of avoiding detention. So let's talk about these fundamental rights and the context in which they play out in real life. So our first scenario is at home. So the immigrant is inside the home. The ICE agents have knocked on the door and they say, and they want to come in. So the fundamental right is that no one has to open the door unless ICE has a judicial warrant signed by a judge, or if they are given consent to enter. So you want to be really careful because consent can be implied um, by opening the door even a little bit just to look at the warrant. So just so that is just a word of caution. So there are ways for a US citizen to assist. Again, this is all going to be needed to, be using your best judgment about reading the situation, um, and we recommend, and it's recommended that you can help via phone or in person, and you can provide translation support if it becomes obvious that that's helpful. You want to make sure that you're also assisting, but assisting with a bit of distance too, because you never want to put yourself between, the door, the ICE agents. You want to give yourself at least like 10 to 15 feet of space. So be in a good position physically so that you're not obstructing anyone, or but also being in a good position to document. So you can be on the phone with the family if you're virtual, if you're over the phone, or FaceTiming or whatnot, and explain, hey, remember what your rights are. This is really stressful. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right not to open the door. If the door is opened, someone take a video, and somebody breaks down your door, and stay out loud, I do not consent to enter. So, and if you're videoing the family saying that out loud, that's evidence that they can potentially send to others, send to attorneys, and use at a later time. And again, you can state those things if you're present on behalf of the household if they ask. You just want to make sure you're doing things again with the immigrant. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a pretty simple explanation. I'm not going to go into in too much detail, but I think the two things that you can focus on is the header and the signature. So on the left-hand side, this is a judicial warrant, because it has the words U.S. District Court, and it'll be signed by a judge and not an immigration official. And then, so if you look at the right warrant, it clearly says that it's an ICE document. They all look the same, or essentially the same, and they're signed by an ICE official. So you could also quickly Google this if you forget it. That these examples are readily available online. Okay. Okay, so the next scenario that we're going to get into is in a public space, at ICE checkpoints. In DC, there are ICE checkpoints. So, if you're a US citizen and you're there, remember, everyone has the right to remain silent, and ICE also needs a warrant to search a vehicle or get consent from the driver, or excuse me, the car owner, or the people within the car. They're going to be asked to present ID. There is the law that green card holders must carry their green card at all times and show it if asked. US citizens do not have that obligation. And of course, if you don't have a green card or a lawful status, you want to make sure that you're not never give false documents, someone else's documents. It's also there, you don't need to show foreign ID, passport, etc. If you are the driver of the car that's stopped, you can certainly say, I'm a US citizen, and refuse to consent on other people's behalf that's in the car. I recommend, just speaking So that's my best recommendation, is to just lead with, I'm a US citizen. Why is this stop taking so long? Are we free to leave? And again, documenting where possible. Okay, we can move on to public spaces. So I'm sure you've seen videos that people have taken of, arrests on the street. In DC, there's, plainclothes officers and ICE officers walking around everywhere. You can see them. So if you are on the streets, you see someone being detained or encountered in a situation, you can kind of take the similar steps, you know, asking if this person is free to go, or if they are being detained, um, approaching and announcing that you're a US citizen. Again, it's just really important that you are mindful of how, you know, that while you can help, it's important to be mindful of how you're helping, and, not escalating the situation, not obstructing or impeding or physically touching any officers or blocking officers. This can lead to criminal charges for you, and it won't help the immigrant avoid detention. Like, that's not the goal. The goals are to, for the, citizen observer, citizen friend, is just to create evidence, assert rights, create visibility, and, de-escalate and avoid detention where possible. um, and these slides will be available. I know I'm kind of going through them quickly, but it's a lot of the same kind of assertion of the same rights. So, if you are, again, out in public, or when you see an arrest taking place, and you are able to step in, if this is someone um, this is a really difficult time, a really stressful time, of course. But if you are able to provide that, like, psychosocial, connection, I'll call your family, I'll get you a lawyer, and making eye contact, that's going to be really impactful for the person, so that they know that they're not alone. And as Rosa explained, the emergency response network, and, what comprises that, start working on that, getting that network flowing, and, not working alone. If you don't know this person, then, you can still document, just in case, you can figure out who this person is later, and provide the documentary evidence, of, of the incident and anything that happened, at a later date. But do not ask for their name or a number, because this is actually giving advice to ICE. So it's recommended not to, um, you know, it's kind of forcing somebody to actually give up information that they should be remaining silent at this time, or choosing to remain silent. Um, and then, if you know this person, also just remember to share the video, and try and share it with their attorney if they have one. Okay, so the next slide discusses detention center visits. This is important because, as Rosa said, families fear visiting detention centers because they're afraid of visiting themselves. You can also, it's kind of difficult. It has been difficult lately to find people who are detained. So there is a ICE locator, but it's usually not accurate until, or they usually don't show up until at least 24 hours into their detention. But they are often moving people around quickly, and so, yes, people have had difficulties finding their friend or loved one, or client. So once you do identify where they're located, you can go to the ICE website, and identify all the requirements that are needed for a visit. I do highly recommend looking into it, and making sure that you, um, just because there are a lot of very specific requirements for visiting. Sometimes people can only have a certain number of visitors or hours, etc. And and you also can take that opportunity to document conditions and treatment at the facility. And finally, finally for me, there is the U.S. citizen can assist in bond hearings by providing letters of support. This is great to get other citizens to write too. Just recommending the person as a model citizen. They're not a danger to the community. They're not a flight risk, and these letters really matter. So. Attendance is possible sometimes, but sometimes they're virtual. So it really, I would focus. Really, it's good to focus on letters of support. Interpretation is also is another way to assist, but just be mindful of the attorney-client privilege, and if you're more of a facilitator of the meetings and not just the interpreter, just because you want to make sure to protect that attorney will also be trying to protect their privilege, and so they might be not sharing with you the information because that would be breaking privilege. So you want to be mindful of that.
All right, thank you, Rita. So we're going to continue what she was mentioning. I'm actually going to go back to how do we create the emergency response network? Like, what does all of that really mean? So Rita left it as talking about, bond hearings. So bonds are not a couple hundreds of dollars. They've been from $3,000 to $20,000, and sadly, you can imagine multiple people getting detained, multiple people with bond hearings. Nonprofits are completely overwhelmed trying to provide as much support as possible. So what we do recommend contacting put bond funds networks like the National Bail Fund Network. We also recommend looking into potential fundraising. So setting up GoFundMe is also very important. Organizing community events, and we're not talking about host a 100 attendee event, but just a dinner with people that are around you that can you can share the story and talk more about what is going on, and encouraging people to fundraise for individual for bond. Reaching out to religious organizations. If this person was a part of a church or a synagogue, can you reach out to them, let them know what is going on? And most likely, different religious organizations have their own budget to support their members. So don't wait to reach out to a national bail to a national nonprofit or even a local nonprofit and wait until they get back to you. I would encourage you to on your own try and set up GoFundMe, try to do fundraising, and we'll share a quick data on why this is critical for right now. Also, as part of the emergency network response is family support funds. So if the person was um, the main breadwinner, right? The family just lost their income. So obviously a detained person, they can't work. So there's rent, there's utilities, there's food. When we talk about all these ways that you can help, I do want to quickly pause and say this is not one person that should be doing all of this unless they can easily do it. But this is why that network, that community is important to come alongside someone that's going through this. So one person can look into options for rent. One person can look into options for utilities. Another person can look for options for food, right? You can contact local nonprofits and see what they can help with. Children, the school is now back in session. If someone were to get detained right now, children still need to, get school supplies, get clothes. They still need to go back to school if they can. So these are things that we need to be mindful as well. And sorry, I'm a pet owner. pets. We got to remember about our pets as well as the other family members. So there's just multiple things that we really have to consider as someone that is in detention, and the rest of the family is dependent on that person or partially dependent on that person. So just to talk a little bit about a couple of systems, so banking and financial aid. Um, During that, when you're trying to create that emergency response network, who should have access to the account? So obviously, someone that is very close to that person, ideally a family member, should be an additional person that should have an access to the account. We also want to protect their privacy, setting up online bill pay if it is possible. Again, this person is not working, but where it is possible, setting up those online bill pay, navigating mortgage or rental assistance programs. So if they do have a mortgage, contacting that person. We have to remember that this person is detained. Their world is stopped, but everything else is still ongoing. Bills are still coming. Life is still ongoing around them. And so navigating mortgage assistance program, calling mortgages, seeing what they can do. Most likely they are able to help, especially in a situation like this. But again, you want to try. Rental assistant, talking to whether it's an apartment complex or if they're renting from, someone that owns the home, or basement, room, etc., talking to them, letting them know the situation, seeing what they can help with, and applying for emergency funds. So again, reaching out to local nonprofits, seeing who can help with those temporary funds, and yeah, seeing who's able to support during this physical difficult time. We mentioned children's needs, right? So children going back to school, enrolling in free lunch programs if they are not part of a free lunch program, communicating with teachers about the situation. If this is happening and it's impacting the family, impacting kids might not be able to perform well in school. So letting the teachers know, hey, this is happening with the family. You don't have to share much information, but just explain this, high level, this is what's happening with the family. This might impact the child, especially if they're not doing well in school. So letting the teachers know, or the administration as well. Arranging counseling services. This is a very, very traumatic experience for children. So most likely schools have counseling services, especially for children, and most likely free. So reaching out to, again, teachers, administration, to see if they can arrange counseling services to help the child during this difficult time. And as also, if you're able to either attend alongside a parent, if one of the parents is detained, the other parent is still trying to manage the household, if you can go alongside with them to parent teacher meetings, or even on their behalf, and sharing the information later. We really have to think about how this is impacting the family emotionally. So sometimes this might seem maybe a little too dramatic, but it's really not. It's really a traumatic time, very traumatic moment, and these extra steps are very, very helpful for the family. Employment issues. So again, while the individual is detained or may potentially being deported, the work is still going to be calling. Where is this employee? What happened to them? So contacting their employer and letting them know the situation as much as you can, negotiating to hold their job as much as possible, seeing what options are available, talk to the HR department, letting them know the situation, as again, high level. And unfortunately, if they are not able to negotiate to hold the job, collecting their final paycheck, right? For an individual that might not know how the employment system works, and they might not know how how can you collect the final paycheck? You gotta pick it up, you gotta get it mailed, etc. It's a direct deposit. So helping the family during that is very helpful. And if needed, applying for unemployment for the family if they're eligible. Again, like that's something that might be completely strange territory for a family, on top of everything that's going on right now. One quick data, and this one you can look it up, is according to April 2025 data. detained immigrants spend an average of 46 days in immigration detention. So that's a month and a half of just being detained, and everything that you've done is completely on hold, but the rest of your life is ongoing. Bills still need to be paid. Employment, your work is calling you. Your children might be needing more support. So it's just something to keep in mind. And just a quick comment, because I know we got a question about data. We'll share all of this resources and data information after when we follow up with attendees. Long-term advocacy. So this, of course, this is happening to someone that you know, someone around you, you want to advocate, but also something to consider advocating. Again, being the spokesperson, if you can, you really want to share their story as much as possible. Again, immigrants with temporary status or being undocumented, they are afraid to show their face, and they should be careful because ICE can find them at any time. So you as a US citizen, you want to be that spokesperson. You want to share their story while still protecting the family's privacy, while humanizing the situation. And if you can, contact local reporters, especially it comes back to that documentation. If you see ICE breaking the rules, which sadly it's been happening a lot, letting reporters know, like, hey, let's bring more awareness to the situation. Political pressure, you can get representatives to write support letters, especially for bond. So that's something that you can reach out to your local representatives, while also keeping in mind that anyone, including Republican officials, can contact ICE if they know of an undocumented person. So you do want to be careful protecting someone's privacy. And if you are trying to work with someone that, someone or a Republican official that might not be for your advocacy work, protecting your privacy still, because they can contact ICE, and it has been known in certain cases. Organize constituents to call offices, right? Especially if someone is not, if a representative is not, listening, or it's not, for your advocacy work, but you have, again, your community of supporters, your emergency response networks to share what is happening, and attend town halls to raise issue. Town halls, there's been a lot of ICE raids, ICE presence, so you as a US citizen can go to these town halls and again share their story while still maintaining the family's privacy. So we put in a couple of resources here. You're welcome to, if you want to take a screenshot. Again, this is being recorded, and we'll follow up with this information after the webinar. To be fully honest, we had an overwhelming response to wanting to join the webinar. So we really didn't have enough time to put as much resource together right now. We will follow up with more information. It was very helpful to hear the questions we have now, the questions you guys put in the when you registered, and that's going to help us create these resources and share that quickly post webinars. But we do have legal support. Raices is free and low cost support in some areas. Again, I mentioned DOJ accredited representatives. If you guys are not familiar with what DOJ accredited representatives are, they are, alongside immigration attorneys, they are allowed to provide legal advice and can represent someone as well. So there are another resource, and they're sometimes lower cost as well. So you can just look up on Google DOJ accredited representatives roster, and the full list of nationwide this will come up. Local legal aid societies, again, another resources to reach out to, an American Immigration Lawyer Association, pro bono attorney connections as well. If you Google that, it should come out a list to people that you can reach out to. Rapid response support. Unfortunately, again, like with everything that's going on, this can be slightly limited, but we did want to provide at least two options. Freedom for Immigrants and National Immigration Detention Hotline. They do have certain times that they do work. So, but they're a great organization to look into. Any local rapid response networks. So reaching out to like Googling local rapid response networks, and then your city and state, there should be community specific emergency support available. bond funds and detention support. I mentioned Raices. Raices does help with detention bonds as well. They have a program for that. National Bail Fund Network, they have a directory for local bond funds that you can reach out to. Detention Watch Network, they're an advocacy against immigration detention. That would be great to connect with. And of course, local community bond funds. So if you look up local community bond funds, you see city and region specific bond assistance. We talked about essential support. So again, bills are still running, food still needs to be served for the kids, for the families. So reaching out for local support, Catholic charities. They have emergency assistance, food, housing. Those are some great, that's a great organization that you can reach out to. Again, putting in your city and state. Local food banks. Again, emergency food assistance for family, local food banks. If you let them know the situation, they're very, very open to trying to help a little bit more than what they usually help with. And United Way local chapters as well. They have a lot of essential services that you can reach out to. Advocacy and policy. This type of work is yes, we encourage you to be a part of creating these communities, these emergency response networks, but enforcement is increasing. Sadly, it's getting worse. So be an advocate, right? There's a couple organizations, America's Voice, Immigration Policy Advocacy and Messaging, National Immigration Forum, which is a bipartisan immigration policy reform, and the local immigration rights coalitions, which is community-specific policy advocacy. A couple of things that we also want to share about the programs that we have in case you're interested in partnering with us. We do have an immigration-free online training program that we are launching very, very soon. So if you're interested in being a part of this, it is 100% free, online, self-paced. You get to learn immigration overview, legal pathways, challenges immigrants face after arrival, more information about this and how to be an effective ally. This is really for everyone that wants to learn more about the immigration justice system. So if you scan the QR code, you're welcome to join us. This will be at the end of the slide as well. So I'll just kind of move along for right now. We do have an ally network in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, so the Washington Metro DC area. We are working on replicating this into other cities, but right now we have it in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So if you or you know someone that wants to be a part of this community where we do support individuals that want to help the immigrant community through community education, training, storytelling, local advocacy support, and the ally network development. So if you're interested in this, we also have a wait list or a form that we encourage people to fill out as we begin to launch this within just a few weeks. So we do focus on, again, helping our community to help be prepared, help our immigrant neighbors, such as the rapid response network that we've been talking about. I mean, the last thing, we can't do this work without your support. So if you are financially able to support the work that we do, fund trainings that turn neighbors into prepared allies, build these rapid response networks across the DMV and also beyond, launching more know your / know their rights workshops. We want to do more of these as well. Your support funds these types of trainings and again helps us really teach more people how to be effective allies. And if you are interested in bringing this training to your community, we are also able to do, in addition to doing more online Know the Rights workshop, we can also do other in-person, depending on schedule and availability, storytelling event, or other ways that you might want to explore building ally networks as well. You can contact us at partnerships@storiesofimmigrants.org. So I know we are kind of right at time. I just want to end with something before we get to the Q&A. So we do have a couple questions that we want to cover. But this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly." So this is no longer, this is the data that I shared in the beginning. And just to share again, this is not a direct data that we found online. We just got data of how many US citizens are in the United States, how many people are undocumented, how many people are living in mixed status families, and just put all of that in AI and helps us see, again, the power of AI, see this picture that we most likely have interacted with someone who has can face deportation, can be detained, or might have someone in their family that can go through similar instances. So in a moment where today, where most likely people, U.S. citizens, regularly interact with someone who could face deportation. The power to protect our neighbors has never been more urgent or necessary. There's no longer it's no longer helping strangers. These are community members. These are people around us. Again, the person that gives you your coffee in the morning, the person that you say good morning on your way to work. It could be, again, your coworker, their family might be going through something. This is no longer, it doesn't apply to me. It does include you. It is in your community and it is happening, and it's sadly getting worse. So we thank you guys for being here. We're going to go into a Q&A